Good morning, everyone. It's Lee Henson, president and founder of AgileDad, and it's time for today's episode of Daily Standup. So without any further ado, let's get started. Today's Thursday. We've got lots going on today. It's a beautiful day. I wanted to talk to you about an article that was recently published that was sent my way. It's regarding changes about getting people to move. And I wanted to talk to you about 5 really important C words. Of course, the number one is the one that I just now said right out of the gate. Thanks to my friends at Leading Agile for putting this out here. Mike and his team do a fantastic job. The first C is change. Now, change sounds scary, whether it's changing a vehicle, swapping out a vehicle to get a new vehicle, moving across the country, having a baby, doing whatever's happening. Change at work is also scary. It's just that systematically, our minds, we as humans, don't necessarily want to process change or don't feel as comfortable with change. So automatically, anytime there's a change, it triggers a little bit of anxiety inside of us. And that anxiety can easily be squelched if we know exactly what we need to do to get over said change or to get through said change. Because sometimes it's not about getting over anything. But the truth is, whenever you make a really meaningful change, when you make a big change, it requires you and oftentimes other people to think a little harder or to feel something they haven't felt before or to just do something differently. So the concept here is that the goal is to get people to stop doing the status quo and get people to move. I couldn't agree more. I think that we need to get there. And I think that that requires another really big C. So here we go. This quote is the quote that sort of set the stage for me choosing to do this review for the podcast episode. The quote is, communication that establishes connection, provides clarity, and consistently reinforces the change. Vision to combat the force of fear wants to maintain the status quo. So I'll say it again. Getting people to see requires intentional and effective communication. Communication that establishes connection, provides clarity, and consistently reinforces the change vision to combat the force of fear, but wants to maintain status quo. So I want to break this down for you because we have communication, connection, clarity, consistently, and change. All C words, right? So I think it's important for us to understand each of those. Now, when I'm talking about communication, sometimes people restrict this to just lax forms of communication. I hear a lot of companies say, oh, we're keeping track of everything on a Trello board or we're doing Slack. And that's great. Don't get me wrong. Some communication is better than none. But I think it's important that we, even though we're in remote environments and we're feeling a little fatigued, it's important for us to have really good communication etiquette. And sometimes that means talking to people face to face, whether it's on a Zoom call or moving forward with ideas. Sometimes it means establishing a personal connection with someone and talking through what they see and what their issues are. I think that when you're trying to connect with the intended audience, the first thing you have to have is you have to be able to walk a mile in their shoes. They call it empathy. How does this change affect them personally? Are they afraid because they don't want to learn a new skill? Are they afraid that it might give them a lower status of some kind? Could they be afraid that this new thing is going to make them not needed anymore? It doesn't matter what facts support it, but when you're talking about change, what matters the most is that you understand the connection that that person has to the change and how they're feeling, so that you can put together a solid communication plan of how this is going to impact and what's going to happen with regard to this person and with the opportunity for that change. The next C is clarity. I always tell people clean and clear. I tell people that all the time. I want your communication to be simple, right? And I think clarity is the tool that allows you to communicate what most people see. So they have a quote from Mark Twain that they pulled in here. It says, "I didn't have time to write a short letter, so I wrote a long one instead." I've heard that quote before. It's easier to use a lot of words in a document, in a presentation, or add extra details to an email than it is to simplify it and make it clearer in some cases. The reality, though, is that the more short and direct your communication is, the more effective it is. And I tell people that all the time, just quick and to the point, right? I tell people Vanilla Ice got it right. Next, you have consistency. And I think that when we're talking about consistency, The quote that comes to my mind is the same one I posted here, which is quite funny. If I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times. And if I had a nickel for every time I said that to one of my 4 children, I'd be independently wealthy. But the truth is, until you said it 1,000 times, sometimes you may not have even said it once. So continuously reinforcing a message is critical to success in maintaining momentum. Sometimes we have to keep people excited and make sure that we're keeping them engaged and that we're keeping them in the game so that they have a good understanding of what they're trying to do. So getting people to move requires a starting point. It requires frequent check-ins, and it requires consistently driving or pushing to make sure that people are on board with that change. Now, one of the things that's not mentioned here, another C word, is culture. And I think that sometimes culture eats everything else for lunch, right? So it's just one of these things where you have to be in the right frame of mind and you have to have the right openness in order for the change to even be considered. You have to have the culture of change as part of what you're trying to do. So while change is about getting people to move, and I wholeheartedly agree, I feel like there's a culture piece that needs to be in place first. And I think that that's something that some organizations still struggle with because, as we mentioned, sometimes people change itself instills fear. And sometimes people or organizations are so afraid because they can't see the light at the end of the tunnel, or they see the light, but they're not sure where it's coming from. And the good news is 99% of the time, the light at the end of the tunnel is freedom, but there is the 1% chance that the light at the end of the tunnel could be a train coming from the opposite direction to run you over. So I hope this was helpful for you, and I hope that you can learn a little more about embracing change and how it'll impact you. We encourage you to visit AgileDad.com, where you can learn more about this topic and others. And if you have an idea for an episode of the Daily Stand-Up Podcast, we'd love to hear from you. Learn more at AgileDad.com. Thanks again for being with us, and we encourage you to stay healthy, stay well, and stay agile, my friends. Until next time, do take care.